I'm the noob, I guess is the best way to describe it when it comes to art. I'm an accountant by trade. Um, so you will get asked dumb questions by me, and I apologize in advance.
I mean, you're intelligent. You have a master's degree.
I have a master's degree, but that doesn't mean I know art. I mean, again,
But
a fish is very good at swimming, but it doesn't mean he knows how to climb
it's
trees.
not going to be like, why blue, though? You're not going to be like, why blue?
I went to ask it every single time now, though, you realize. I'm like, there's no blue in this. Why is there no blue in this?
Well, that's actually a question I'm used to because my husband is not an artist and blue is his favorite color. So whenever there is blue present, then he's very excited about it. So he's learned a lot over the 6.5 years of being in a relationship with an artist. But so I'm not a stranger to the why blue question.
Okay.
Do you have blue a lot? I don't think, I mean, you do. Yeah. You're first on your website.
I really used to, but now I've been really interested in blue. I guess we're talking about blue now.
Oh.
So.
We are.
But yeah, no, I actually have been like really drawn to it recently. I don't know why.
Is your husband encouraging this? Like this is great. Go more,
maybe
go more.
Maybe it's like a symbiotic osmosis sort of thing. Like he learns a little bit about art and I like reward that by implementing blue in my painting.
Is he giving you like a cookie when you finish a painting?
Oh, right. Like in response to
this has 3/4 are covered in blue. You get 3/4 of a cookie.
Oh man, I feel like we're going down a weird rabbit hole, but no, that's not how it is. I'm like good, which is good, but
yeah, at least you're not like, hey, wait a second.
Wait, have you been training me? Yes. No, I feel like there's some weird dynamics happening in that strategy, so that's not it. But yeah.
How often do you go to your studio?
It's in my house, so every day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And what's your like painting schedule?
Honestly, having a schedule in this time is like not a real thing, but I've kind of developed where it's around after lunch, so like 12:30, 1 o'clock until about like 6:30 is about when I spend time in my studio, and I've been kind of ramping up the process, of painting a lot. I've had a lot of customers and clients coming through and commissions that I've been working on, so that's been really helpful to like keep me like on a schedule because people are expecting things from me. So
yeah,
that's been great. But yeah, but having it it was in our garage, and then it got very hot, and so I commandeered a room in our house, and it's been wonderful. I have great light.
You're in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, so that gets pretty warm. How warm did it get? Like, what's the hottest that it got this summer?
This summer, it honestly has not been, like, it was hot, but it's not been that hot. Like, probably upper 90s, but, like, we never really broke 100, which is weird.
Yeah.
Because we had a very mild spring, like a real spring, which was awesome. And, yeah, and now it's, like, middle of September. Like I was telling Keegan, it's like 70 degrees outside and lovely. And normally it's, like, 100 degrees. So...
Eric, what about Chicago? Yeah.
It's 63 right now. We never broke 100 either.
No?
No. We had like shorts and t-shirt weather, but that's about it. I mean, right now, again, we're on the discussion with my nephew that, no, you can't wear shorts to go outside and play. Yes, put on a sweater and a coat. Like, so I got in trouble yesterday because I was babysitting.
Yeah.
And when he went outside, my brother-in-law comes out with a sweater and everything, and he's in nephew's in the shorts and a t-shirt. He's like, why is my son freezing to death? And I'm like, he said he was fine.
Yeah.
Well, that's time in Minnesota last week with my husband's family, and it was like 43 degrees and raining, and I was like, what is happening right now?
That's a shock.
Yeah, it's weird times in the world.
We didn't even have really snow in Boston over the winter, but really? it got hot here. It got up to like 95 a couple days.
Yeah,
but only a few days.
Like the hottest we've had is like 97, 98, which is like still very uncomfortable, but not breaching the 100 degree mark. So,
Evan, what got you started painting? I guess let's start at the beginning.
Oh man, the very beginning. I honestly don't know what. Well, actually, yes. So I've always been creative in everything, like from day one. I would say I've always been the one drawing and doodling and like making little cartoons for my friends in school and taking art classes and going to art camp and everything. But I was always kind of drawer rather than a painter. So it wasn't really until I got into the BFA program at UGA that I had a really great teacher who kind of helped me transition from drawing into painting, and then another great professor who was a grad student who kind of opened the world of Aqueous Media to me in a really fun and exciting way.
Aqueous?
Way.
Aqueous?
Yeah, water-based media. So like
Water-based. Okay.
anything that's aqueous, anything wet.
Aqueous.
That's not like oil soluble, it's water soluble. So
I see.
yeah, so I mean, it's been like a gradual transition for a while, but painting in and of itself would be undergrad.
What? And you make cartoons?
No, I mean, I used to, because that's about like as refined of a drawing capacity I had when I was, which is not to say it's not a refined skill set. It was just, they were cartoon-ish, because that's what I was capable of at the time. So
did you ever make it to like realistic illustrations or?
Not illustrations. I did more realistic drawing and painting in undergrad. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean, cartoons weren't really like, it wasn't like strips or anything. It was just like drawing my friend, like caricatures of my friends, or like, know, scenes or something. So it wasn't like the full blown like skill set of cartooning. I would not say that I'm just a closet like
cartoonist,
or cartoonist. That is absolutely outside of my skill set. And
because that's a rabbit hole I was willing to dive down.
Yeah, people who can draw like the same character over and over again are very like,
it's impressive. Yeah, I can't understand it.
Because I'm like, okay, I drew it once, I have to do something else now.
I don't know if it's ADD or something, but I have the same problem.
Yeah, no, it might be a little bit of that.
So you didn't paint in high school or before college?
No, not really. And I think again, it's just kind of what was available to me. I had art camp, so I like did paint a little bit, but it was like very, very rudimentary, basic, and it really was more drawing focused. Pencils, markers, chalk, pastels, things like that. Yeah, and like I remember in high school, one of my art finals, if that's what they're called in high school, I can't even remember what they're called, but it was like a colored pencil still life, which was like super intricate. So that was kind of where I refined my art abilities at a younger age and what I felt comfortable doing. So
okay. Yeah,
that's what I was working with for a while until probably sophomore year of undergrad.
Did you know you wanted to be an artist? When did you like figure out that was put the pedal to the floor?
Yeah. So I always wanted to do something creative. I kind of went through the whole spectrum of creative fields. I used to want to be a fashion designer when I was younger, and I would draw little fashion models and things. And then I was really interested in interior design, and I actually have worked in interior design since grad school, so that's been really fun.
Oh, cool.
But I never went to school for it because working heavily on computers is absolutely not my strong suit, and that is a very computer heavy field now with CAD and everything. So yeah, so I actually went into undergrad thinking that I would do that, and then I had that professor I mentioned who really kind of pushed me and called out some of my skills and was like, you're really good at this, and honestly you seem more passionate about it than everything else. And my sister had a hand in convincing me as well to just go for it and do studio art. So that's what I did, and I love it. I'm happy I made that decision.
So you went from not painting to painting. What was the transitional period like? Was it a difficult learning process, or did you kind of pick it up right away? What was it? What was that transition like?
It was kind of weird, and like people might think that drawing and painting are like naturally the same thing, but they're really not. And I mean, there's of course overlap in building like a composition and, you know, refining shapes and color and whatever. All of that is kind of similar, but the way that you have to build a painting is kind of different, because I'm used to like starting with a sketch and an outline and kind of rendering shadow, which again is still, there's some similarity there, but there was kind of a computation error and like my first transition from drawing to painting because of that. So I'd want to like have the outline and be able to just like move left to right as I render things, whereas with painting it's you start from the bottom up where you're kind of building layers and refining, and more like it's almost like 2D sculpture in that sense, where you're starting with a really, really kind of blobby mess, and then you're like etching it down into a more refined piece. So that was a transition for me to like figure out that process and make that difference, or that jump from drawing to painting. But yeah, and then working abstractly is an entirely different frame of mind too, that I had to transition out of too. But yeah, all of that kind of builds on itself to be able to be in a place where you can work abstractly, I believe.
So when did you start doing abstract?
Yeah, so it was with that Aqueous Media course that I mentioned.
It was a course called Aqueous Media.
Yeah.
Oh
It was
my
a
God.
whole,
I've never heard that word out loud
really,
before.
yeah. So it's a whole course on working with Aqueous Media. So watercolor
Wow.
and water, like, thin acrylics, and just doing weird things, like
Yeah.
making weird sort of marks with water soluble paint. And so we had this project where we had to make like 100 different small works in a very short amount of time. So in doing that, a lot of it did just kind of digress into abstract mark making. And it was really fascinating to kind of like see that go from like, okay, I'm going to paint this fish. I painted a fish, and then like that fish kept getting iterated differently until it was just kind of this abstract composition. So, and it was super fun figuring that out, and kind of learning that process, which is a different side of your brain that kind of gets activated, which is really cool and really influential in my work, kind of that connection of how our brains process.
It's like improv. You went into improvisation.
Yeah, there is a lot of
mode,
improv, I think, in my work, for sure. Intuitiveness, I feel like, is the word that I'm used to, but I guess improv is also
Yeah. Well, I know that a lot of artists don't like that word because it takes away the intent of the stroke. And
yes, which is a whole nother can of worms, is having to be so intentional about every single mark you make. And
yeah.
I think that there is,
Wasn't it Kandinsky that did like actual just improv #1 or?
Yeah. And that was for the Western canon. That was a huge shift, in the painting process. But yeah, no, abstraction has been a part of our world and our understanding of color and shape and form since like day one of human existence and of human society. So just to plug that it's not just Kandinsky.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, in your artist statement, you mentioned the Kuba tribe.
Yeah, no, so that's something that's been really important to me right now, and kind of furthering my research, and also kind of reifying like the thought that abstraction belongs to society. It belongs to not just the Western canon, and not just to like white men in the mid-century who decided to make these huge paintings and put them on gallery walls, and all of a sudden it was like fascinating and new and avant-garde. But it's been a part of, like I said, it's been a part of different forms of design and making since day one. And you can look around, like even with quilting, which is a really it's a form of making that I feel like a lot of cultures in some way, shape, or form are like comfortable with and know. And just looking at that and how those shapes and patterns come from their environment and what's around them, which I think is fascinating too. Like even the names of some of the quilts and things will be like related to like the barn structure or like the A-frame shape of a house. And so it's like what they're used to, but they're reducing that shape or that knowledge down to a form or color, which is kind of the crux of abstraction.
Reduction or pushing in or pulling out, right? It's like a weird balance. And those are the quilts that you're mentioning are
the ones that I look at specifically are the Quilters of Gee's Bend, which is a group of like African American women in Alabama, I believe. And
Alabama, yeah.
It's part of their community and culture and sort of community making, that they come together and they sing spirituals and they make quilts out of their old jeans, and they're like just from what's around them. And there's this really beautiful inherent formalism to their work, but it's not like it's just, they're just making quilts. And
so it's clear that the quilts are like well-made quilts, because my mother is a quilter actually. And she's gone from doing traditional block prints to like almost abstract quilts
Oh, I'd love to see them.
yeah, they're really cool. But when I went on that site, it was just really interesting to see quilts that weren't square and like
Yeah.
had patterns that didn't add up. And it's weird to see quilts because quilting is so geometric and precise mathematically. Even those abstract ones need to be like they needed to measure out properly to get it to fit.
Or yeah, just like fit within the rectangle that they're working with. But within that rectangle, there can be like whatever you want happening in there.
Oh yeah.
Like whatever's around you just happens in that, which I think again is very well related to abstract painting on canvas. Yeah, I could talk about them forever. I think it's fantastic that there can be something so like humble, but also like high art happening on the same surface, and like they're using what they have, but at the same time that there is this kind of inherent, because they're not like looking through abstract expressionists like catalogs from MoMA. They're just like making what's in them and making from what's around them, which is kind of where I feel really confident in the work that I'm making, because it is just kind of like this language is inherent almost in human making and human understanding, that there is this sort of, anyways, that there's just like this form of abstraction in all of us in some way, shape, or form, and it's always kind of been there, but we've just now started to, in recent history, started to kind of explore that more.
And those quilts, I'm going back to the quilts because it's such an interesting part of your artist statement to like bring those up, I guess, because they definitely relate to your paintings. But what am I trying to say? Oh, crafts, like the craft world does not accept that kind of quilt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's there is such a stark one side or the other. Like either you're a perfectionist of it, which is kind of the Western tradition of quilt making, and then there's this more humble, this is what I have, I'm just talking, I'm just singing, I'm just, but both are valid, which is kind of just like if you're looking at the formal canon of like Western abstraction, you have the same thing with geometric abstraction and and abstract expressionism and Helen Frankenthaler existing in the same plane as Poussin or whatever. So there's like this, these things can exist simultaneously and not invalidate one another. Because we have a quilt from my husband, his grandmother, or no, aunt, great aunt. Sorry, I'm like going through like who gave us these quilts, gifted us these beautiful handmade quilts for our wedding, and they're like perfect and they're gorgeous, and like one side is like this beautiful kind of paisley thread pattern, and then on the other side it's the gridded quilt, and like those sort of layers happening together, I'm like there is this kind of simultaneity that can happen and can exist to make something like formally beautiful but also like full of soul and memory. And I think that's again that there is this kind of duality of abstraction in that sense. So I digress, but yeah, I could talk about them for a long time because I think it's so fascinating and brilliant. And
those are the quilters of Queen's Bridge, right?
Gee's Bend. So
Gee's Bend, yeah. The quilters of Gee's Bend.
Yeah. There's a documentary out with them too that I think it was the Times, but it's so, oh my gosh, it's just so like makes my heart smile like watching it, because it's just these old women like in their humble little homes quilting, and then this guy comes through and he's like they're beautiful, and then like takes them on a bus tour of America to like show off their quilts and like these beautiful huge museums. So even just that sort of side by side just juxtaposition of like humble Alabama like in these huge like Chicago museums or whatever. It's like these things can exist at the same time and not be like so exclusive or so lowbrow, highbrow, because there is this really beautiful accessibility when both of those worlds collide.
Eric, are you looking at those now?
I am looking at everything right now. I'm going through them again.
I was just wondering, like, do you prefer normal geometric square quilts, or what do you think of the abstract or oblong quilts that they have on the site?
I prefer more ornate normal though, but again, I'm also coming from the background of I like my songs to repeat,
right?
For lack of a better word. I mean, like you tend to hear, like in music, for example, you tend to hear a lot of times the same. You have the 3 chords of awesomeness. That's what I've experienced with my art as well. So,
yeah, which is entirely valid, and not one is not necessarily better than the other. And especially coming from, you said you're in Chicago, so the Midwest, so that sort of formalism in quilt making is very traditional to the region you're in, which is, you know, could play a part into how you receive art and how you you know, process it. So that's cool. That's great.
I was just wondering what you thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
No wrong answers.
Okay. I disagree. There are definitely wrong answers, but
No, I don't
also
think
come
so.
from a different background.
My theory is that there's people who prefer like the rigid like geometrics and people who prefer more abstract improvisational, and like both are valid, right? Like you can watch a sitcom and laugh just as much at every joke is timed and beat it out, and you can watch like an improv show where like nothing has been written and it's complete chaos, and both are really funny, right? But like they're different forms of comedy. It's sort of like the same basic idea, you know, Eric?
Yeah. No, I understand exactly. I think that a lot of times with abstracts you get a bigger range. Like so with abstracts you get stuff that, for lack of a better term, are not appealing at all to even more appealing than the stuff that's rigid. So like rigid, if I were to draw my fruit plates, it would not look like a fruit plate because I'm not a good artist, but you would have the vain ideas and people would do that too. Whereas like somebody go out and do abstract, it's either much more appealing to me or it's much less. So or somewhere in between. So that's what my view is. So
Well, art is always subjective. So even if people try very hard to make it objective,
thank
there
you for babying me.
always subjectivity to art making and pretty much everything that humans make.
Right.
There's subjectivity to it.
So Evan, how did you end up in grad school? Was that right after college or before?
Yeah, I went right in, and I am still recovering from being so exhausted from just going from school to school to school. But yeah, so I just kind of felt like I was hitting a more rigorous stride, like right at the end of my undergraduate degree. And I felt like I needed to kind of press into that a little bit more and expand just everything, my whole world of art making and studio practice. And because I knew that there was more to it than like what, you know, you get in undergrad. So I just applied and I got into SMFA, and we trucked it from Athens, Georgia, all the way up to Boston.
Yeah.
And I am thoroughly exhausted from it, but it was an important part in my studies, but also like just in life in general.
What was your thesis work about?
Yeah, so my thesis work was about, so it kind of again was the next chapter or next volume of my undergraduate work, which is about healing and recovery and how our bodies catalog memory and how we can like physically remember too, because I was in a really bad car accident. So it was kind of under the first part, my undergraduate portfolio was more about like that, specifically that event. And then my graduate portfolio was more about like kind of studying like how we catalog in our brain and archive memory, how we archive trauma, how we archive anything really to kind of make who we are and how our brains like physically change with each new learned experience and with each new memory formed.
What was the car accident?
Yeah, so I it was 2014, and the guy left his car in the middle. It's kind of long story, but a guy left his car in the middle of the shoulder in the right lane of traffic on a bridge at night, and there I hit the car, and my car spun around, and then in avoiding an 18-wheeler, I stumbled out of my car and over a bridge and fell 53 feet
into
the woods, and I shattered my vertebra and spent a long time in the hospital, lots of surgery, and yeah, so long story.
Yeah.
But survived really what medically and physically and everything I should not have.
How long were you in the hospital?
For 11 days, and then I was recovering for 3 months.
So, yeah.
And still ongoing process of things.
Did you have casts and
yeah, I had a whole back brace
and
leg cast and little scooter to get me around, and couldn't like turn over in bed without help. It was a there's a whole thing that has very much so influenced my
Yeah, I bet.
how I
Yeah,
view
must have.
life and everything. So yeah, it was a lot of, first it was kind of wanting to come to terms with that, especially because in being in a situation where you're like, oh, it's a miracle that you're still here, which it absolutely is, kind of always only receiving like, yes, why are you upset, you're still alive? And it's like, yes, but there's so much that I have to like, especially being like 20 at the time, like not being able to have any agency about any motion that you make. It was very difficult for me to kind of reimagine who I am and how I move through the world, literally and mentally and spiritually. So yeah, that's kind of what led into that kind of study of how we deal with any form of trauma and how we deal with any form of memory and how that really forms who we are, and just like that archiving process and learning those things, and like how our bodies hold physical memory as well. So yeah, it's been a really fascinating deep dive. I got to go to Spain on a grant to study it a little bit more, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So your thesis work has more like just the colors are more like drab. Is that the correct word? Um,
muted.
Muted, sure. And it's a little bit more chaotic than your current work.
Yes. So I loved working in this sort of way, like a more intuitive installation way. It's kind of like painting abstractly, but on a huge surface and with more than just two-dimensional material. I'm not really working that way right now, just because I felt like this kind of closed that chapter for me where I needed to get this sort of work out. Plus, I don't really have the space to do this work right now.
Yeah.
I can't like turn my whole house into an installation room. I still
I'm
have
sure
to.
your husband would love that though.
Yes, I mean, he's very accommodating, but that might be the line. But yeah, so this work was definitely, it was looking into memory making, how we frame certain experiences. So there's like a floating frame, and as you move around it, you frame different parts of the installation. So kind of also coming from a place of, every person approaches every situation. Like you might be looking at the same thing, but they come with their own baggage more or less and their own histories. And so that will alter the way you're looking at the same thing. So kind of this form of memory making and this form of histories coming to the same platform and always inherently being different. Like there's no way to be, again, objective in how we view memory or how we view really anything, unfortunately, on a
It
large.
really looks like you took apart a body and then put it back up, like in different places.
Yes, and that comes a lot too from my looking into like what having to come to terms with what happened with my body and how it was kind of taken apart. Like they took a rib and ground it down and replaced some of my spine with it. So there is kind of this sort of replacing parts of bodies with other parts of bodies, which is kind of grotesque.
Yeah.
But finding a way to also make that approachable where it is like this kind of discomfort in the grotesqueness, but still like not so much so that you want to turn away, but hopefully that you'd want to kind of look closer at the smaller details.
Right, because that's the other thing. It's not just like chaos. And I walked into your studio when you were painting, and you were like inches away from the canvas, like putting a like small dot on one of these paintings, and then when you walk up to it in the installation, it's like really large, and you don't want to get that close when you're looking at this work, but you put that much detail into it, which is really like an interesting dichotomy, right?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of, even though I'm not working in an installation necessarily right now, I think that's a lot of what I try to keep in mind when I am building paintings is like this concept of being able to take it in from far away, but as you get closer, there's always something more to discover, which has kind of always been my fascination with painting in general. With like drawing, you're kind of just working two-dimensionally. Like you can have really, really intricate mark makings, but there is just kind of a flatness to it.
Right.
Whereas with painting, if you get closer, you can see how it was built. And just like you can kind of peek behind the layers and peek behind the curtain, but then still have this whole
I always go right up to paintings and I'm inches away in a museum.
Oh yeah,
You
I
know?
get yelled at literally every time in a museum. It's like almost a game that we like. How long will it take for a docent to yell at me because I'm
Yeah.
sticking my nose too close to the painting?
The docents have told me that they can tell when an artist is in the museum because the artist is like inches away
Yeah.
from the painting.
Yeah, and like trying to like get around the varnish so that like the light doesn't hit it in a weird way. So you're like
Yeah. I don't
really,
know why we do that, but I guess that's what all of us do.
yeah, yeah. I'm
I'm
sure.
on the opposite end because I'm so klutzy. Because I've unfortunately touched artwork because I literally walked up to something and tripped. So like I always go as far away from it as possible because I can see the artist sitting there crying like my life's work. Why?
My life's work.
That's so weird because everyone touches art like before they install it, right? And then you go into a museum and it's like, do not touch, do not, feel or do anything like that. It's just,
The amount of people touching it like are versus like so like just even transporting art, it's gonna be put into a crate. The person's gonna seal the crate up, move the crates, open the crates, do it. That's only gonna be like and maybe like 10 to 20 people.
well, sure.
An art museum, even just on a given day, is gonna have like well over 200 people.
I'm not saying everyone should touch the painting. I'm just saying
We're
like,
not advocating for museums to touch and feel in
right.
some sort of
Well,
space.
I have seen, not to speak down on the human species, but I've worked retail before. I've seen idiocracy at work,
Oh,
and
100%.
and if you don't tell people they can't do it, they're gonna do it.
For sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, there's definitely, especially older works. The more oils that build up on your hands and touch things, and things are very, very fragile. So no, there are certain things that you shouldn't touch. But like, we're not touching it if we're looking. My hands
But
are
I just
behind
want
my
to.
back, and I'm just leaning forward.
I want to see if it has like a bump on there, or if it just looks like it does.
Yeah, I want to see it. Like, I love seeing how highlights in paintings are always thicker than the shadows, which for some reason you always think about it being different, like because the highlights are like the high points of light, which isn't tangible. But those are always the like really juicy parts of a painting, which is super fascinating to me. So I get in there and I see like the architecture of like the paint stroke.
The juicy parts.
Yes, just nerding out over paintings, and then I get yelled at. So
right. What did you think of your thesis work after grad school? You kind of step back. You're like, well, I did a thing. I did it, and I had to turn it in, and so.
Yeah, I feel like there was a weird sort of anticlimactic moment for our thesis work, just in like the way that it was displayed and where it was, but it also was like a huge weight. Like after I got my, hey, you passed, here's your degree. It was like, oh, super. So it wasn't for naught. But I think stepping away from it, it was like, okay, everything was really important that I made here, but like it wasn't so precious anymore, especially because it was installation. It isn't impermanent by nature, and so having that kind of moment too of like throwing away half of it,
like everything you worked 2 years on is
they just have like a huge dumpster outside the studios, and you just like chuck what you can't fit in your car, can't fit in your tiny 600 square foot Boston apartment. So like a lot of work got thrown out,
which is hilarious because they just spent like 2 weeks telling people not to touch it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Going back to our conversation about touching things,
right? So stepping away from it, I learned a lot about letting myself like work intuitively, letting myself build works in different ways, which has helped me kind of approach just making paintings in not such like a precious way as well. Which I guess I've honestly never really been super precious about my paintings. I'm not like, I don't tape my edges, I don't use rule, like I'm very much so like, if I make it and it's good, then it goes out. If I don't, I just rip the canvas off and restretch a new one, sort of way of thinking about it. So that has been really, really good for me. But yeah, it was like a thing that I had to do. And now I have this whole archive of research that I've done, of ways of making that I've worked with, like with ceramics and with painting and with soft sculpture, that kind of all sort of amalgamate into like how I pull works together now in my studio.
So your work now is still abstract, just filling people in, and it's a lot lighter and has a lot more color. What are you thinking about now when you start painting? Like, where's your thought process now? Are you researching? What are you thinking when you're going in there?
I'm not so heavily in the books as I was in grad school. And I am trying to like allow myself the levity of just like allowing myself to enjoy my work, because I feel like it's so important to like have the basis, like the knowledge and history of the whole canon and blah blah blah, and like doing the work and doing the research, but it is still like part of you. And I feel like as you're making the work, so I feel like you should be allowed to enjoy that. Like it shouldn't be like so like, oh, I have to pull out my soul and it's going to be painful, and sometimes it is, but like also you should love yourself and love the work you're making. So I am thinking about that, and like just allowing myself to enjoy the work that I'm making and not be so hyper focused on the intentionality of every single mark. But but I am still thinking a lot about the archive, and how, still like thinking about how our brains catalog information. So I think abstraction, like I've mentioned, is a really more acute tool to talk about that, because it is such an intangible concept to talk about memory and talk about like archival processes that our brains like chemically undergo as well as like spiritually undergo too, because there is this kind of personality forming and like person making that archiving memory does, which is kind of a sublime concept and a inherently abstract concept.
Right.
So I'm thinking about a lot of that too, but also just again like decentralizing the concept of abstract art from mid-century men to like global societies throughout history, and that belonging to humans, and not just like what a lot of people say now, where it's dead, or it's not for you, it's not for a Black woman, it's for white men, and like, which also isn't true. It's just like who the world centered around, especially in the mid-centuries. Like there are so many Black women making abstract art, like
especially the art world, right? Especially the art scene.
Oh yeah, especially then. So it's like, you have to look at who's writing the history books and who's canonizing things, and like what they consider art versus artifact, which is like a whole other issue.
And outsider art too, right? Because there's just so many like minority artists that are considered outsider art.
Yeah.
But like if they had written about their work the way somebody in the canon had written,
they had marble columns surrounding their artwork, then it would have been legitimate. Yeah.
Right.
It's a whole issue that we really need to consider on a huge scale. But
okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Eric to just like tell us what he thinks about one of your paintings. Is that okay?
Yes, I'm very interested.
Okay, and Eric is not an artist, and this will be completely, he doesn't know that I was going to ask him to do this. So, okay, so I'll just pick Double Rainbow and Summer Sorbet. So hold on. So if you're following along on the podcast, her painting is called Double Rainbow and Summer Sorbet. Or sorbet. Is it sorbet or sorbet?
I can decide how to pronounce it. I say sorbet, but I think
sorbet.
Sorbet.
There is bloom.
There is a touch of blue. Yes.
There is a touch of blue, so I hope the husband's happy.
So Eric, what do you think of this painting?
I mean, I like it, but again,
no buts, and
okay.
no saying no.
I like it. I'm more drawn onto the top right corner than I am anywhere else.
Why?
Not like just because like even like the parts that are left blank, I assume were intentionally left blank for a reason. I wouldn't understand why, but they are. But the most action seems to be happening towards the top right.
What do you mean by action?
Just like looks like there's some red spotting up top, and there's orange with blue on top of it, and intentionally left white space.
Okay, so are you drawn to the bright colors in the top right corner?
Yeah, bright colors in the top right corner, and just the layers of paint, because it looks like you painted on one thing and then purposely painted on top of it something else. If there's a deeper meaning behind this, like I'm supposed to
wait. What is the feeling that you get when you look at this painting?
I see from calm to like anger, like the further you go right. Like if you were reading this the same way you would read just
Like
anything, just like
a book?
a sentence, a book.
Yeah.
It starts off with a more calm kind of stuff too. There is some action right away, but further you go right, the more just stuff there is.
Okay, what about the title? What does the title tell you about the painting? It's called Double Rainbow and Summer Sorbet.
Did not see a double rainbow. I don't see a man crying underneath it going all the way. If that was intentional.
All the way.
All the way.
Double rainbow.
Double
It's so
rainbow.
beautiful.
Yeah.
You are beautiful.
Okay, so there's no double rainbow.
No double rainbow.
Summer sorbet?
I see because like those are sorbet like flavored colors. So like the ice cream is what I saw it
Okay,
as. So sorbet makes sense, but the double rainbow,
you didn't see it.
I didn't see that.
What about like comparing the way that the title makes you feel to the way the painting makes you feel? Like if you were to associate double rainbow and sorbet, and then kind of like look at this painting, does it add
rainbow,
up?
I think like after the storm comes a rainbow,
Oh, yeah.
and it starts off with that because it's kind of like more relaxed and then goes more intense as it goes further on. So I don't see again. I don't see the double rainbow.
Okay, that's fine. You don't
But-
have to see it.
I don't. But like the sorbet, I understand. Like it seems like you're enjoying yourself while doing this. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Also, I thought there was like a bear in the top right hand corner. Like if you go back to it really quickly.
Oh yeah, a bear.
Yeah, like a
Okay.
bear face.
See, that's like another fascinating thing that some people get so frustrated with abstract art is hearing people say like, "Oh, this is what I see in it," but that's kind of like the point of
Yeah.
abstract art too, is that it leaves space. Like it's an active experience. It's not like you're viewing someone else's experience. I bring something to the table, but it's completed by the viewer also bringing their history to the table and their point of view to the table, and it's like, so anyways, some people get like very upset about that, but it honestly is, it's the active thing that abstract art requires of the viewer, which I think is great. I can put whatever I need to and want to in the painting,
Yeah.
but it's not ever fully complete without the viewer also actively being present in it, which I think is a really beautiful, like energetic, never stagnant quality of abstraction. So
Totally.
bears, that's fine.
And not to contradict you completely, but I do want to ask Evan, was Eric correct
Correct in the bears?
in his whole description? No, I'm just kidding.
Am I going to get the Billy Madison treatment where like in your entire I award you no points, your entire rambling, everyone's now dumber for having listened to you. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
No, absolutely, absolutely not. Like I said, it all comes from a place of where the viewer is coming from. For me, I made this painting after I saw a double rainbow above my house after a storm. So in that, you are accurate in that association. And so I made this painting. I think, also what you're perceiving is, I think you need to give yourself more credit for, because like I said, abstraction is like, we had this idea as to like, oh, we can't possibly know unless I went to art school to like learn what it is, but it is so inherent in human brain chemistry, essentially, to like make associations, look for patterns. That's like what we do.
Yeah.
And how we make sense and rationalize our world. So in that sense, it's like very egalitarian, it's for everyone, it's like it has space for everyone to come to the table in that sense. But I made this one in the midst of quarantine after I saw this double rainbow above my house after a storm. So there is a lot of like weird energy in it too, of like, I've been up for a while, but like find the small joys and things. And so there is kind of that just lightheartedness that I felt like I needed personally in it. But then there is also still the whole like
the storm.
Layering. Yeah, there is also the layering of the different the different layers of the painting, which I work on unprimed canvas, which allows you to layer transparencies really well,
Yeah.
is a lot about that kind of building of his. So that's always present in my work, is like that building of layers, is the building of histories, of kind of the stacking of experiences that always influence how you approach something, how you approach the work, how you approach seeing a double rainbow in the middle of quarantine. So
Yeah.
that's all there. So I honestly, your description is 100% like accurate in where I'm coming from, and hopefully accurate from where you're coming from. And if there's a little bear for you too, then little Easter egg, who knows?
Yeah. So you're definitely coming from more of an emotional, going into these more emotionally, like you saw a double rainbow, got to paint. Is that?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been very emotional. I mean, I'm a very emotive person, and I think that for me, the thing that has always been so frustrating in the academic world of art is this attempt to separate emotion and to separate soulfulness from the rigor of art making, or the rigor of academia art making. And again, I don't think that those things have to be inherently separate. Just
Yeah.
like as we're moving into concepts of like interdisciplinarity and like working across fields and with scientists and with psychologists and with environmentalists or whatever to like create works, I think that there is, in art making, there is inherently going to be, for me, that crossover. It's again,
Yeah.
not to say that it's wrong if people want just the rigor. I think there's space for that, and there's a need for that. But yeah, so for me, it is like, it's the knowledge that I've built. It's me, which is an emotive person.
Yeah.
I'm a soulful person. I think that's really, I'm a spiritual person. Like all of that is present in my work, and I don't think one negates the other.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
cool
I think
though
give
that you
yourself
can,
more credit, man. I think you did a great
yeah.
job looking at art.
I also was partially led there though too by Keegan's like, hey, what about this? So
Well, that's okay.
yeah.
But
Okay.
that's what you were thinking. I didn't put thoughts in your head. I'm not a magician.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, we have to learn how to like, we had to learn how to read. We had to learn how letters go together to make sounds. Like, but once you kind of know the gist, you can riff on it a little bit. So you now have the tools to kind of figure out artwork now. That's cool.
So Evan, you sent me some influences and we've talked about a couple of them. The G's Bend quilters. Well, I looked up your artist statement. We talked about the Kuba tribe prints. What about Nanette Carter? Nanette
Yeah.
Carter?
Yeah.
She's a contemporary artist.
Yeah, she's awesome. So a catalog that's really important to me is the I actually have it here, but it's Magnetic Fields: Expanding American Abstraction, 1960s to Today, is the title of the catalog / show that traveled around. And it's centering Black women and women of color who have been making abstract art since the same period of time as the white men, and
Oh, great.
get
Yeah.
the credit for it, but this kind of centralizes them and shows like, hey, they were making work in the same way at the same time, and
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about it. So that's how I found out or figured out her work and saw her work in correlation with the abstract movement. And I just think it's I've worked with Mylar, and she works with Mylar and collage and oil paints, and it's kind of like all materials that I'm really familiar with, but the way that she constructs her compositions are really fascinating. And she also works a bit in installation. And yeah, so I've worked with like literal collage, but for me, I'm so impatient that like, I really am. I'm just like, I have a hard time like sitting down to like make the separate pieces. I want them all to just already be together.
Yeah.
So I kind of find ways to collage without collaging.
Right. You paint on the collage, right?
Yeah,
Sort of.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Because
yeah,
you're using like graphite and oil and different mediums.
yeah. So I definitely use mixed materials on my work because I love the interplay of that, just quality of mark making. And again, like I mentioned, I've been working like I'm drawing for longer, and that's more inherent to my gesture as well. in terms of gesture, like we're used to writing with pen or pencil or writing our names or, taking notes. And so that sort of motion that you take with your hand with a pencil or a pastel or whatever is more inherently tied to our inherent gesture, regardless of if you're an artist or not. So I always like bringing in that kind of almost written quality that sits behind my artwork to kind of give that sort of personal, very intuitive gesture to the work.
So then another influence you sense, so it makes sense. So the collage of Nanette is kind of like your connection to her work. Is that about right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and the materiality of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because her work is kind of, to me, it's very droll. I don't, I just don't like the colors very much. Personally,
you like bright colors?
Yeah, I do. I do. So the next artist was Wangechi Mutu. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Okay. What about her art?
So back to that that Aqueous Media course that I took. I think I need to take that. Jamie Bull is the artist / professor that was teaching that course. I feel like I need to like call her out because apparently it's very important, the work she exposed me to. And she's an awesome artist too. Jamie Bull is a great Atlanta-based artist. You should look her up. I think you'd actually really enjoy her work because it is brightly colored. It is funny.
Oh boy! Oh, good.
There's a lot of comedy in her work, and very similarly with Wangechi Mutu's, she kind of deals with feminist issues, but in a kind of absurdist sort of way, which is fascinating. Side note to that, but yeah, so I was exposed to Wangechi Mutu's work in that course, and I like fell in love with it. With just like how much of the layer building you can see on kind of more transparent surfaces, and her collaging, her message too.
Yeah.
There's just such a fun, weird, alien sort of interplay with the materiality and then her subject matter.
She looks. It's like stained Salvador Dali. Is what I would say.
It does kind of have the lankiness to the limbs and things. Does I guess have like a surrealist quality to it.
I love these, by the way. I love them. They are funnier, I guess. So
there's like a seriousness to it as well. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think artwork that allows you to kind of enter in either a soulful or a comedic way and then get to like the goods is always a nice way to like bring people in and then hit them with what you got.
I think that's what I like. That's the art I'm drawn to most, is like you bring people in and then you get them, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know.
And I love her color palette too. Like all the pinks and reds she uses don't feel so like juvenile. I feel like it's a way that pinks and blues and things tend to feel in some work.
Yeah.
And I have always been kind of averse to using pinks and things, but now I'm like loving it. And I look to her a lot to kind of the sophistication of her palette and using these sort of colors. So
let's see. You mentioned Helen Frankenthaler.
Yeah, I feel like I would be remiss to not mention her, considering abstract aqueous painting on rock.
Eric, have you heard of Helen Frankenthaler?
I have not.
Okay. So she's a woman who kind of like
worked at the same time as these abstract expressionist giants, men and things, but didn't.
Yeah.
Took her more time to get her work equated with theirs. But colorful painting.
This is her, Eric. She like made giant paintings that were like stains.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she started working on unprimed canvas as well. And I think if I'm correct, and I hope I am, because I don't know how many people we're talking to, but she used to work with oil and like thinning it down with solvents, and then then acrylic paint became more of a thing, and kind of opened up a whole different world of possibilities because of the way oil paint on raw canvas over time will just eat it, whereas acrylic paint, being water-based and essentially just like watered down plastic and pigment, won't be so volatile on the canvas.
Yeah, they look like watercolors.
They do.
They're really cool.
Huge. They're
Yeah,
most of them are very big. No,
but they're massive. They're like she's sitting on them. Yeah, so that's how big they are when you look at these. Yeah, they're awesome. Are you ever going to work that big, Evan?
oh, I love working big. I guess I'm in a studio that's only so big, so I have to kind of think about that too, because any works that I'm not like working on a commission or working for something specifically just end up living in our house in some way, shape, or form. So
Did I see that you did a mural recently?
yeah, I did a mural at what's called Stack Squares here in Atlanta. And it was super fun. I also approach murals kind of in the same way, where I don't ever have like a specific fully fleshed out plan. I have to like work intuitively in some way. Again, I
Oh,
think it's
cool.
because I'm really bad at sitting down and sketching things to perfection and then doing it. I'm just like, I'm gonna do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Candida Alvarez.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Her work looks to me like a lot like your work.
Yeah,
Like it's a lot closer to your style.
I love her color palette, how vibrant it is, how just yeah, the way that she pulls together different shapes and forms, and it kind of has this sort of paint by numbers sort of like squiggly edge quality to it, but again,
Right.
not that. It's super more sophisticated than that. But she also uses like really she'll just like use crayons sometimes, and or like color pencil to make a huge drawing, and it's I just think that kind of readiness of material and kind of boldness in her color and confidence in her color palette is just beautiful and gorgeous, and I love it a lot.
Yeah, I've noticed that she kind of hides figures sometimes in her paintings too.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that now and then.
Yeah, I will every now and again. I miss painting the figures. I feel like it might come back, and yeah, who knows? Frank Bowling does that too. Not like hidden figures, but like huge paintings that are more abstract, and then placing just kind of a person in there.
Yeah.
And I think he does it in a really graceful way, which I haven't quite mastered that yet. Making that graceful transition.
Right.
But yeah, so maybe in the future, yeah, there's
Yeah, definitely Frank's colors are closer to you too, right? Where if Candida's composition is close to your paintings, I'd say Frank's colors are
yeah,
near yours. Yeah.
yeah. No, he's awesome, and his work again, it's really big, and really just. I mean, Google doesn't do it justice, of course. Like standing in front of his works, it's just like
Yeah.
again, you want to get in there because there's so many different like layers and different pieces of it that are just so fascinating and beautiful.
It's another one you want to be inches away from. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a nice thing about super huge paintings is you don't necessarily have to be so close to see all of the little details. So
Right.
yeah.
I was confused about Mavis. How do you say her name? Pousse.
Yeah. Yeah, she's definitely more like rigid in her forms, but it reminds me so much of quilting. And I
Okay.
do layer, not on all of them, but I do layer sometimes like more, like I've even started using tape, which is just like a huge
Oh
level
my
up from
gosh.
that generally. But yeah, so just like the way that she layers kind of more flat color, more rigid geometric shapes reminds me a lot of quilting. And yeah, I think her work, she tends to take from her environment too. She lived in the city and like by construction sites. And so there's a lot of that like architectural rigidity to her work. But some of it, like I feel like you can even like hear the sounds of cities when you're like looking at her more detailed work. So yeah, I look at her too in that sense of just like kind of layering the more architectural forms in there.
Yeah, these are just fantastic.
Yeah, I think they're, and also just like having so much movement without having, with like just using straight edges or like simple shapes like circles and rectangles, and still having a lot of play in that, I think is really fascinating.
Talking about rectangles, Catherine McNaughton.
Yeah. Oh,
her
I love her
paintings.
work. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
She's contemporary.
Yeah, I'm super obsessed with her work. Yeah, it's a huge girl crush obsession.
Oh yeah.
I just want one of her paintings in my life at some point in time.
What about him draws you in?
The color, the movement, the layers, the like. She also has subtle figures in her work too, which I think is just gorgeous. The way that she's like able to layer the thin, probably similar concept of like working on raw canvas, but then layering it with these super flat uh, graphic forms. I just think that she has such a good mastery of composition and movement and color where it doesn't feel overwhelming, even though she's using such saturated colors
Yeah.
everywhere all the time. Yeah, no, I think she's honestly like goals. Like I
Yeah.
love her
Yeah.
work.
She also hides figures too. I noticed
Yeah.
now and
Yeah,
then.
She had a whole article, I think, about I think it had to do with like Playboy and the female form, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then she started hiding a lot of, or not so hidden, figures and torsos and things in her work. But
Right. Right.
yeah,
Well,
I
cool.
compositionally, color wise, everything. It's scale. It's like the perfect scale too. It's not too big, but it's not too small. Like I don't know. I just love it. Love it a lot.
Yeah. Well, Evan, this has been awesome. I
Yeah.
really like your new work like a lot. Like it's
Thank
fun and it's bright, which is really, I guess
you.
I
Yeah.
guess we've established that I like bright
Like bright
colors.
colors.
Like a
I like
moth.
bright colors. I think we're doing good. Yeah, no, it's been great. I feel like there's been a lot of I feel like this quarantine studio period has been like 5 years worth of developing a practice, like a new practice for me. So it
Oh
seems
yeah.
like a lot has changed in like 7 months, but it really honestly feels very much so me.
Have you gone to brighter, like happier? I'm not going to say happier, but have you gone to that brighter from is like a retaliation against like the darker moment that you're living in? Do you think?
Oh, maybe. Oh, that might be it. I honestly haven't thought so much. I think it's also switching from oil paint to acrylic paint,
Oh yeah.
um, because there are like fluorescents that you can get with acrylic that I used to just be like, "Bleh, we're not doing that. We're earthy. We use oil paints. We paint the figure, and they're in nature." And so there was just like this need for earth tones and for flesh
Yeah.
tones, and I love them still. I have no, I will always that will always hold a place in my heart. Like painting the figure in oil, painting nature in oil is just like a super yummy, really enjoyable experience. But yeah, there's just like a whole different element to using acrylic paint, using like fluorescent colors and bright colors that can layer and transparencies in really interesting ways. But yeah, just like allowing myself to be more bold in my practice too. I think I've now come to terms with like if I use bold colors and I can't be shy in using those colors. So it
Oh
kind of
yeah.
plays off of that too, where it's like, all right, if I'm going to make a bold mark, it's going to be in a bold color, and therefore it's a bold, confident work. So
Interesting.
yeah. And
Are
it's
you
also,
an introvert? I've always wanted to ask this.
I don't know. I think I'm an introvert.
The answer is no. Then
Yeah, I feel like I'm like on that line. Like I gain energy from like I can't be too sequestered for too long, but I don't need huge groups of people. Like I don't like big crowds, but I like talking. So I
Yeah.
feel like I have been talking a lot. So I'm sorry if I've been cutting anybody off.
Oh no,
no,
no.
not at
This is
all.
exactly what we need in a
Yeah, no,
podcast.
I gain energy from being around people, but I also gain energy from being like
Alone.
alone in my thoughts too. But I have to hear them spoken out loud. So I talk my husband's ear off a lot whenever I have those super solitary studio moments and I
Do
come
you
out.
so do you get annoyed when he's around too much, like, and you can't like get your own time?
No, yeah. See, that's the thing is like I
Okay.
like knowing that he's there. I like having our dog around. I like knowing that people are there
Yeah.
that I can interact with if I want to. So,
Right, right. Okay.
yes. But when I lived with like a lot of people, I did not like living with like so many people. That was like,
Right.
so when I moved in with him, it was like, this is perfect. It's just one other person who I know and love and like know how to communicate with.
Oh
And we
yeah.
both have our spaces. So it's great. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'm both. I can't be alone for too long, and I can't be in a crowd for too long.
Right, right. Well, I nobody can be alone for forever, but
Yes,
yeah, I was just wondering.
crazy. Yeah.
I think I've come to terms with the fact that I'm probably an introvert, but I'm
Yeah.
like extroverted introvert, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I haven't been suffering as much as a lot of people I know who are extroverts in this quarantine time, who are just like going nuts because they can't go out and be like get the energy of like going to concerts and going to like
oh
I'm
yeah.
like, I have AirPods and I can just listen to music instead of being there. So yeah, no, I'm actually more comfortable in this time than I thought I would be, which I know is super.
You may be an introvert. I don't know. Eric, what do you think? Weigh in.
I mean, no, because I'd say we'll go halfway. You're half
Halfway.
and half.
Yeah, see, I feel like I feel like that's my whole life. It's not all one thing. I'm not,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I can be introverted and I can be
Well, I
extroverted.
mean, just like I prefer, like I used to do my work at when I was working from home. I used to do my work at a coffee shop because I'd rather not be alone in my apartment doing my work. I'd rather, like, even though I'm not talking to anybody because that'd be really awkward while doing like mathematics. How you doing?
Yeah.
But Eric, you're an extrovert because you knew everyone's name at this coffee shop. He goes to a Starbucks like right next to his house. And we walked in there one day and he like knew everyone who works there.
Oh, that's
Like he
awesome.
knew all their names and like their quirks and like he had like running bits with everyone. And
Oh,
introverts just don't do that.
Okay, so I'm also used to my dad though, who like my dad's a doctor who literally in an hour airplane ride when he was by himself became best friends with like the two people that were next to him, and they were like literally like, on his shoulder crying. He's like, "It's all right, I'm here,"
yeah,
and it's like,
that's my dad. He makes friends. If you're like pumping gas next to him for too long, then all of a sudden he's gonna have your phone number. So
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Well, Evan, thank you so much for doing this podcast.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been fun to
It's
chat.
been interesting. I love getting to know your work more and like how you came to it.
Yeah, thanks for asking all the good questions and talking about blue paint and all the
Okay, so Evan, thank you so much. We'll see you later.
sounds good.
All right, bye.
Bye.